season. So the Raptors did not cut Terrence Davis, essentially picking up his contract guarantee. And give me your first impressions about that.
Yeah, so the analysis I heard on this basically said that the NBA protocol is for teams to not be the disciplinary oversight in such situations. The NBA itself is going to do so, and that the Raptors deciding to waive Terrence Davis could be interpreted as disciplinary action, which would be an overstep on part of the Raptors. So instead of thinking of it as the Raptors have decided to pick up Terrence Davis, it should, I think, be understood as the Raptors have decided to wait and see what happens in the courts with Terrence Davis, which I think is the right move. I mean, it's a bit spicy for a sports podcast to get too much into the criminal allegations, but obviously domestic abuse is very tricky to understand in our court system. It's often my word against your word. So I don't want to just say we'll let the courts play it out and trust what the courts say. I think there is room for the NBA to have a balance of probabilities understanding of what plays out in the courts and decide what to do based on that. But right now we're not doing anything. I think that's the right call. Everyone gets their day in court, and we don't have to go with what the courts say to decide what to do about Davis, but the evidence will certainly speak for itself, and decisions should be made based off that.
Yeah.
But
and Terrence Davis, he had a great rookie season, and he's still on the team as of right now. But I think with the way that this kind of news broke out and the way it's going to come down, they're most likely going to be able to move on from him without too much of a hassle from the players' union, because a lot of other guys can provide what Terrence provides, and just the culture that the Raptors have built, he doesn't align with that. And so I see him, even though they've kept him for now and they're avoiding that whole disciplinary perspective, I don't think he'll be on the team come opening day.
Yeah, I heard his next court heat day is like December 11th or so, I believe. Yeah, I just don't want to interpret the Raptors' lack of action or action on this Sunday as showing any interest or faith in Davis. It's more just trying to comply with the NBA regulations.
So with that news about Terrence Davis, kind of the picture becomes clearer, and with that sort of confirmed moving forward that he's not gone, but he most likely will be. And I'm going to move on with the assumption that he probably won't be on the team opening day. It gives us a clear picture of what the Raptors roster is going to look like to this point. And on the whole, I think they got slightly worse, but it depends on the steps that some of their younger core pieces take will affect where they end up at this point in the season. So
I agree with you, and I will jump into that. But I just want to asterisk it by saying the decision to get slightly worse, I absolutely agree with for the opportunity at the free agency market.
exactly.
Right, let's talk about those steps.
Yeah. Well, okay. So Kyle will probably give you the same output you'd hope. But again, he's 1 year older, and point guards who reach this age and this stage in their career, there's usually a pretty steep decline in production around this point. So you can't be so sure that you expect the same level of production from Kyle, because he's just been an all-star every year for the past 8 seasons. So you could actually see him taking a bit of a step back, but I guess that's why they signed Fred VanVleet, and you hope that he can take another step forward in becoming the leader of that offense. The shooting numbers off the dribble will probably have to go up. The playmaking is going to have to go up for Fred, because who knows how much longer Kyle is going to be on the team, and he's really going to have to fill into that role. And then the two other guys where you could see them taking a step forward are OG. I think he has the potential to take a big step forward on the offensive end. Pascal you could see has been passing off a bit of that spin move knowledge to him last year. OG's shown off some of the spin moves. The handle needs to get a little bit tighter, and the around the rim finishing needs to get a little bit tighter. And then you'll see him hopefully be able to catch a shot that's an open look, but attack a closeout. So if he's catching a corner three, like opportunity in the corner, but it's not a great shot because someone's closing out, he's going to be able to blow by them and maybe attack the basket and set up someone else for a better shot. And then finally, you hope that Pascal maybe takes another small jump forward and becomes that true max superstar that the Raptors are paying him to be. And he looked like it at the beginning of the season last year, but obviously the defenses were a little bit loose in that beginning of the season. So you hope he can kind of maintain that beginning of 1920 season production across this 2021 season.
Yeah, I mean, I think when the Raptors are at their best, the defense is forced to play loose against them because they don't know where the threat's coming from. They don't know if they have to worry about VanFleet taking a step back three outside the arc, Lowry getting in hot, OG showing, I'll circle back to this, but like his rare flashes of offensive brilliance, or Siakam being that superstar you're talking about. And when those three guys plus whoever we have at center are firing on full blast, that's, I think, what allows Siakam to be the superstar. So the step forward I'd like to see is the ability for him to do that even when the defense is like regularly double teaming him and he's their number one priority. If we're going to pay him like a superstar, that's what I'd hope to get out of him.
Yeah. Ideally, he'll get some help with Aaron Baines being a slightly better floor spacer than a Gasol and similar to an Ibaka. But Aaron Baines you'll have Gasol and Ibaka sit in that paint spot a little bit more when Pascal was getting those post touches. But if they play with him in and four shooters out, he'll hopefully have a little bit more room to operate. And that's kind of how I see the center rotation going, is you'll see Aaron Baines as our starter. And he did that in a decent enough role with the Suns last year. He played the most minutes he's ever played per game in the low 20s, and he'll probably see that sort of workload this season. I really like that they were able to get Alex Len for really cheap because he's basically like dollar store JV and will be able to provide you a big body to throw at key matchups. So if you need someone who's going to go in there and take up a ton of space against an Embiid, against a Giannis, against whoever else it may be, like a DeAndre Jordan, he's at least like built big enough to take up space, and he's actually an underrated rim protector. He's not going to get a lot of blocks, but he's going to alter a lot of shots. And I just see him being like low minutes, comes in, has a big offensive rebounding physical presence, and just will help. He'll take away a couple of fouls that Baines or Boucher may get when they're playing greater minutes in that role.
Yeah, one of the things I was most uncomfortable with heading into the season was our lack of a big body. And we didn't get a skilled one, but at least we got a role player. So Nurse has one more piece he can work with, and I think it's an important one.
Alex Len was the 5th overall pick back in the ill-fated 2013 draft, which also featured Anthony Bennett. We don't claim Anthony Bennett anymore. But Alex Len, hey, 5th overall pick. Maybe there's still a little bit of potential left in there. It's a little bit late now, but you never know.
I mean, almost every player the Raptors have picked up have gotten better. You look at like Ibaka, you look at Freddie. I don't want to take too much credit for Kyle because he's just managed to slowly, steady get himself to that all-star performance. But I think the Raps have a great culture to allow players to blossom. Even Kawhi, I mean, obviously he was already a superstar, but being in the Raps locker room, he played at that peak potential. So maybe there's something there for Len.
Yeah, one would hope.
I want to talk
yeah. The only guy who would kind of go against that culture of development would be Dewan Hernandez. But that also kind of shows if you're making the late second round pick every year because your team's been so successful, it's super rare that those guys are going to hit. And the fact that they've been able to find like a Fred and other undrafted players and those late first round picks and been able to turn them into something special is kind of a miracle in the Raptors development. But DeJuan Hernandez is always a reminder of, even if you're that great, some players just aren't cut out to be developed in the first place.
For sure. But Len has some consistent NBA minutes over the years, so I like the material you're working with him a bit better than a Hernandez. But yeah, no, I love the Raps because they've kind of flipped the conventional wisdom on its head. It's the rule, not the exception, that players get better when they come to us that you don't have reasonable expectations for. And it's the exception that those type of players don't take at least one significant jump.
Definitely.
I got to talk about OG a little more. I agree with a lot of what you said, but I think you can boil it all down to confidence, honestly. The man just becomes invisible on offense for like stretches of 10, 15 minutes. I see him do one or two really great things, like a beautiful drive, a pass I really like, some amazing defense. I'm like, oh my God, OG. And then 10 minutes later, I've forgotten about him. So I think he needs to get his confidence higher and start treating himself like the superstar that we all hope and think he can be. And there's going to be some growing pains. There's going to be some mistakes, but it's about that confident mentality, because I think he's worth making those mistakes.
Yeah, and with OG, the biggest thing is right now he's the fourth option probably in that starting lineup in terms of who's getting the ball to score. But with the Raptors knowing that 2021 offseason is their big ticket, this is kind of a no expectations. Let's see what we have here. Let's try and make the playoffs. Let's do something, but we're not expected to win a title. So this is the opportunity for Nick Nurse to say, okay, what do we have here in OG? What sort of looks can I get him to help him start develop his offensive game in order to, down the line, if we get one of those big name free agents, he's the perfect third piece to a Siakam and a number one guy, right? And so that's kind of the opportunity that they have this season is, let's see what we have with OG. Let's see what we have with Norm. Let's see what we have in Fred, McCaw, Matt Thomas, Malachi Flynn, Chris Boucher. A lot of those guys could either improve or decline in terms of what sort of production you'd expect from them in the following years.
I think that's a good way to end off on the Raptors talk. We have this opportunity to really evaluate every one of our pieces, and 2021 offseason is going to be where we make a huge decision about the future of the team. And this year is the year to gather all the data we can that will help us make that decision.
Yeah. It's also not a bad year to not be one of those late first round picks, because this 2021 draft, man, it projects to be super deep. And I'm actually really excited for some of these prospects who are coming out of college. I've been watching a lot of clips recently because college basketball started last week. And what people are saying is the top 5 to 7 picks in this upcoming draft probably could have gone number 1 in this year's draft. So you've got Cade Cunningham out of Oklahoma State, who just looks like a freak of nature. And he hasn't had one of those signature highlight dunks yet, but he posts up smaller guards. They do a lot of high-low at Oklahoma State. And in transition, he's unstoppable. He's attacking or he's finding the open shooter. And so I'm really excited to just keep watching his games. You've got Jalen Green, who chose not to go the college route, went to the G League. Hopefully that'll run this year, but that actually could hurt his draft stock. But going in, people had him as a top 3 pick, and he's going to get a year of pro under his belt if the G League runs. You've got BJ Boston with Kentucky, who got upset the other day, but he looks to be another like lengthy wing who can score, and he showed some flashes of defense. A lot of these guys are kind of the perfect prototypical build for the modern NBA. 6'7", 6'8", length, ball skills. They can shoot it. They can defend. another guy, Jalen Johnson. And this was actually his first game stood out the most to me. He had 19 points, 19 rebounds playing with Duke, and he had a couple of insane blocks. Like, I go watch the highlight because they're playing Coppin State, who's not a solid team, but they're still a Division I team, right? And he obliterated them. And he's 6'8", 6'10" wingspan, weighs 215. So he's this huge body and he's super mobile. And he had like this one putback dunk over 3 guys, which was just beautiful. I'm very excited. You've got Evan Mobley, Jalen Suggs, Zaire Williams, Jonathan Kuminga, all those guys. So like 1 through 8, there's potential for a franchise-changing talent. And the Raptors won't be in that range, but it just pushes all those guys who would have been in this year's draft, kind of mid-lottery picks. It pushes them later and later into the draft. And so being deeper in the draft is it's not the worst place to be, but hopefully the Raptors can end up kind of in that late teens, early 20s range and maybe get one of these exciting players who are falling down the draft board a little bit.
So on our last podcast, when we started talking about the state of the West, you said you expect 14 of the 15 teams to be potential playoff contenders. So how do you think those teams are going to operate then, knowing what you just said about the draft? Like, do you see them all making a push, or do you think a couple teams with slightly less realistic playoff hopes are going to not push too hard and look to this draft? And if so, do you think the East is going to pick up the majority of that, like top 7, top 8?
Yeah, I will. So with the West, it's one thing to think that you're able to compete for a playoff spot, and it's another to actually do so. So you've got teams like San Antonio, Minnesota, New Orleans, who probably want to be a playoff team, but won't be just because the competition in the West is so strong. So you'll have those teams probably falling a little bit down the board. And then once it gets later into the season and they know they don't really have a shot, that's when you'll see teams really pull out the tanking maneuvers. Yeah, but I think you're right. What we're going to see is, because that East has a little bit less parity, you're going to see a lot of those bottom teams in the East really be skyrocketing towards that number 1 pick, like the Cavs, like the Knicks. Oh man, if the Knicks got one of these guys, it'd be huge for them because they've had some poor luck in recent years with the draft lottery. And so you'll most likely see the East with some of those players, which is not great for the Raptors long term. But again, with the lottery, you never know, right? That's why I love the lottery. It kind of de-incentivizes some of that tanking that these teams do.
But with if you've got a 1 to 7 draft deep, then all you've got to do is tank to like the 3rd, 4th bottom spot, and you can feel pretty confident
about where you're going to end up. Yeah.
You're making me wonder if there's any way we could move for a team we think is going to pick a team in the West, tempt them with something that makes them think they could be a playoff contender, pick up their draft pick, and hope they do not become a playoff contender and steal one of those picks. But that's a bit too much of a pipe dream. But
yeah, I think if that would happen, it would have to be Norm. Norm would be the guy.
Yeah.
You'd package Norm in a first for a first from one of those teams. I just think because the draft is known to be deep all the way through, like past those 8 picks, a lot of teams have been trying to hold on to this draft's picks, and they'd be more likely to move like a 2022, 2023 pick as opposed to this year.
Yeah, I'd maybe like it tempting the Timberwolves with Norm in a first, because he wouldn't be getting starter minutes, but that's not going to happen.
They have Edwards and they have Malik Beasley, who we don't know what will happen with him, but so they're a little bit deep at shooting guard. And San Antonio, maybe New Orleans he would fit in with, but I don't know. You have Lonzo.
I don't want that for New Orleans. I think New Orleans is going to do well.
Okay. Yeah, we'll see. I mean,
it's not going to happen, but it's fun to speculate on.
It would be so fun to have Zion paired with one of these super mobile like lengthy guards, like a Cunningham, Jalen Green, Jalen Suggs are all listed as point or shooting guards, and they're all tall, 6'4" or taller. So if you pair that with a Zion, that would be so much fun to watch.
Yeah. I guess the one other trade that's on my mind for potential would be if OKC wants to bundle like 3 of their 17 first round picks to try and like pick up a top 10 one in the 2021 or an additional top 10 one.
I definitely think I could see that happening. And Oklahoma State already are going to be tanking. But if they package together some of those picks, they could maybe get 2 of these guys in the
Yeah.
top 7, which would be absolutely incredible.
I mean, we said last podcast, it's so fun to speculate about what OKC could do because they have no current expectations and such a strong asset base and are going to definitely pick up one future franchise player, it sounds like. I'd definitely consider, because if you can pick up a second one, then you've got your core with Gilgeous-Alexander, and suddenly you're
Lou Dort, the other Canadian, that boy. Love Lou Dort. He's my guy. All right. That just about wrap things up for today. It was a pleasure to talk with you once again, my friend.
as always, bud.
And we got Eagles, Seahawks tonight, Steelers, Ravens tomorrow. Hopefully those are entertaining. But beyond that, not so much in terms of sports this week. But I'll see you on Friday, and we'll catch up then.
Looking forward to it.